Hi, everyone. Well, we're going to talk to you a little bit about the Dalian method. Before we get started, I'm just going to introduce myself and we're going to introduce ourselves. I'm Leela Harris, and I've been working with Mata Eliza Dalian since 2011, and I'm a Dalian method facilitator, and I live in Kansas City. Okay?
And I'm Nirava Nash, and I live on Salt Spring Island in BC, just recently moved here. And I've been working with Mata since 2013. It's been an amazing ride, and I'm also a Dalian method facilitator.
And I'm Kindy Delay-Gill, and I live in Vancouver. I too am a student of Mata's. I've been working with her since 2008, and I'm also a Dalian method facilitator living in Vancouver, as I said.
Great. Okay, so like I said, we're here to talk about the Dalian method. And one of the ways we talk about the Dalian method is to talk about how it's different from other processes and techniques. And I just want to mention, before we dive into this, we're all going to share our different perspectives. When we talk about what makes the Dalian method powerful and how deep it goes, we're talking about this not from a place of superiority, inferiority. We're not talking about this as a wrong, right, this is wrong, this is better than. There's a lot of marketing languages out there that are just about hyping up things. So when we talk about cutting edge, powerful, really in depth, we're not talking about hyping it up as a selling point. It's our experience in this technique as people who've been seeking for quite a while. And we share this for other people who are also feeling not being helped by what's out there. So we can let them know this exists, that they are still feeling that they are suffering or struggling, even though they've been trying all these things. Okay, so yeah, let's start diving into talking about this technique. Who wants to go first?
I'd like to pick up on what you just said there, because I'm a perfect example of somebody who did a lot of things to help myself in my stuckness. And by that, what I mean is I did work with Reiki, I did work with naturopathic medicine, I did work with counseling, I did work with homeopathic solutions, all sorts of varieties of law of attraction, positivity, putting my attention on things that felt good, gratitude, forgiveness, that they are all part of the journey that I've been through. So, and I too speak from that place, knowing that even though I practice with all that range of stuff, at the end of it, I still didn't see any real change in how I felt inside day to day. And I didn't feel any change in the way that my behavior was interacting in the world in terms of how people were responding to me and my relationships and the quality of my life. So nothing had changed at that level. And I feel so extremely fortunate that the Dalian method even exists, because if it hadn't have existed, where I had got to after that long search was a deeper pit of unhappiness than the unhappiness that had led me to search in the first place.
Yeah, can you give an example of what that means, the deeper pit of unhappiness?
Well, for me, by the time I arrived at the Dalian method door, I was depressed, even though I wasn't clinically diagnosed as being depressed. My symptoms were of a person who was depressed. And hence why I was trying to be more positive, and hence why I was trying to put my attention on things that were going to help me feel better about myself and better about my life circumstances. And the other thing that was really, really bothering me was the quality of my relationship at home. So after 22 odd years of marriage, really the conversations that were going on at home were of two individuals at each other's throats, stressed out, that didn't know how to communicate or relate in a way that was even humane. one person with a lot of pain here and another person over here with a lot of pain, and that's our interaction with one another. And we all know what it's like when we're in the world of blaming and complaining and moaning. Well, that was the way my life was.
Yeah, because even when you really want to, I can relate to that. You want to come into your heart, you want to improve the relationships and reading things and trying to communicate better. Those underlying energies that are in the unconscious take over, right? We can't kind of polish up the facade, because what's really deep down will start coming up, right?
Yeah, and if you're being asked to be positive, say, for example, I wake up in the morning and I've just had an argument. And then the message that my head is giving me is be positive or forgive. But how can you forgive genuinely if a part of you is broken or a part of you is hurting? The truth is you're hurting. The truth is you're in pain. And that's why I love the Dalian method so much, because there's no fakeness around it. It just starts with where you're at. It starts with your honest state, and it says, okay, this is how you feel. And it starts with that, but then the beauty is it takes you quickly into understanding that pain, not leaving you just in the pain. And then that starts the ball rolling. Then the understanding of the pain gets us to the next place, which is, why did the pain come into my life anyway? And then once we get that understanding of why did the pain come into my life, we go on even further on, which is like almost an explanation as to why it had to happen. Because without it, the next step of like your consciousness and your awareness wouldn't have opened up for us. So it keeps helping us with our individual blind spots, because it's so compassionate and saying, okay, your life's in a bit of a mess because you're in these blind spots. You can't see them, but let me shine a light on them.
Yeah. Beautifully said. Because when you're feeling angry or hurt or blaming, and then you're telling yourself, forgive, or don't be in victim mentality, or these kind of mind things, you actually create more turmoil inside you, because then you're judging yourself for not being forgiving, or for being a victim, or for, so it doesn't matter how many great things you hear internally, it actually can create much more conflict, and then there's more of a mess, right?
That's what I mean by the deeper pit of hell. Like there was more confusion, and now there were two parts of me. Before there was just a messy part, then there became two parts, like the one that was living the life, and then another voice that says, no, that's not right. You've got to be positive, and you've got to be upbeat, and you've got to put your attention on the thing that's going to grow, and you've got to do so then there's another voice inside arguing with the original voice, when the beauty now is that there's only one state inside. And thankfully the Dalian method keeps taking us more and more and more into the power of our witness that observes everything from where it's at.
And also then you can experience the genuine forgiveness, like your whole body feels forgiving. It's not just part of yourself because you wish to be forgiving because it's nicer. It's like you genuinely forgive because that person helped you understand something, even if at the time it was really painful and even like traumatizing, right? And really, for me, it's not even forgiving. Like, it's like, there's nothing to forgive anymore, right? Like, it's usually myself I need to forgive.
Yeah.
Or the patterns and holding on and these things. So yeah, great. Yeah.
Narava, you had a lot of experience of like work that was just about the heart and about unity and spirituality. Like, what's your perspective on this idea of sort of manufacturing the fact that we have to forgive? And
well, it's interesting because when you said, how there's the two parts that you were aware of. There's the part that's out in the world, and then there's the inner state. And I remember so clearly, I mean, it's very confusing. So I have a lot of compassion for people that, that have gone kind of are on the same route as I. So I started off with having all these spiritual experiences. And they're just experiences, which at the time you get identified with, and you think that, oh, I must be on the right path because I'm feeling all these things.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of connection to incredible energies. But at the same time, while all of this was happening, and doing mantras, and I was practicing energy work, and these beautiful experiences were happening in the heart, but then my body was still very impacted by life around me, getting triggered. I didn't know how to cope with my children's energies. I didn't know how to cope in my relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I went about it was holding it all tight inside, because I knew that some part of me knew not to project it out a lot of the times. So I'd be swallowing it and looking inside and thinking, okay, what am I doing? But you can't figure it out with the mind. So that was the beautiful, like, amazing part of finding the Dalian method, is now all this internal dialogue that was always going on for me. Like, that got triggered and I feel angry. And what am I frustrated? Like, what is this? What is his behavior or her behavior? What's really going on? What's, like, trying to sort that out inside while I'm interacting was a total nightmare.
Yeah.
So to be able to have DM to now start to slowly make sense of all of these things that I'm feeling inside has been an incredible gift. Yeah.
And then there's a silencing, like, isn't there a magical silencing that begins to happen, where the amount of conversation going on in our head, like, just lessens. I remember the very first time I tried to meditate, I thought I was almost in a madhouse. Like, I couldn't sit quietly to watch what my head was doing because there was so much activity in it. And now, this many years on, with working so diligently with the Dalian method, I can sit, and then as I sit, the amount of activity going on in the head, there's just a lot less. So there's like a silencing that happens inside and more space that grows inside.
Definitely more space. I really relate to that. It's like you can breathe again. It's like there's room to feel your being. And I didn't realize, and it wasn't really until not that long ago, because I wasn't doing it. I used to do a lot of mantras and sounding and different practices. And I didn't realize until recently that that's also a distraction and a way of keeping me from knowing myself, because I was sort of reflecting back on some of the things I used to do. And gosh, like, that keeps us from knowing this amazing space inside, down in the belly. And so, just because something feels good doesn't mean that it's helping us find out who we are.
Mm.
Yeah, and so when we use the Dalian method, Nirava, that empty space in the belly, right? So what would you say? And you didn't have that experience when you were doing the mantras and blissing out, right? You couldn't feel that space in your body, right? So you had to go in and face those things that were happening in the body, which were, a lot of them were negative, very different than the blissful kind of place, huh?
Yeah. A lot of ugliness, a lot of fear, a lot of confusion, a lot of, not trusting myself. And, and what's been a real amazing gift for me is to find, the most amazing part, of course, is to find that silence inside. Yeah. And once that happened, now it's so much easier, like being, I think I would guess that a lot of us that are working with DM now, I think everyone could say that being empathic is just a part of being a human being when you really open up.
That's right.
That's always been an issue for me, to be, being impacted so intensely by the energies around me. But now that I know where this place is inside, it's so much easier to navigate life and feel like, where am I at in this situation? If somebody's projecting, or if somebody's in an intense place, just to see the truth of where I am. That's been an incredible.
Yeah. I think is amazing about having used the Dalian method is that after seeing that everything has a lesson, right? When I use the Dalian method and something comes up in my daily life and I go to use the technique and I'm going through the process, and then there's that moment the light comes on and I see the lesson, and then the emotion goes and I just feel so happy to have the wisdom from it. And after using the Dalian method, after these couple of years, it's starting to develop inside me to look at life like that. Instead of waiting and being in the emotion and then waiting till I do my session, it's like right away, I know. It's like, what is the lesson in this? And the thing is, when people hear lesson, it sounds harsh, like I'm being punished or something, but it's not really like that. It's more like I get to learn something. Life is not punishing me. I'm not having bad luck, and it's not that I deserve to have a bad time. There's something inside me that life wants to uncover by showing me something, and it's through the challenge, because that's the only way sometimes life can get my attention. If I felt good all the time, I'd just be like, yeah. But it's like, because we all, and it's not just me, and I was going to I felt myself going into my past, but I didn't know if you were done, Nirava. So.
Oh no, you go.
Yeah. Okay. So, so where I'm coming from is a lot of, because we all have different dominant themes in our life, us three. So mine was just feeling very powerless and feeling just like really small and like underachiever and not being functioning well at all in life, like normal reality, like just the job, keeping a job, having a relationship. I just was so challenged early on in my life just to function. So I was on psychiatric medications for 15 years for ADHD, depression, anxiety, things like that. And so when I started using the Dalian method, it's like, first of all, I stopped needing medication to function. Not only that, I just wanted to get rid of the pain that I felt on a daily basis. I just wanted to feel okay. So it was really about fixing myself. But then as I started using this technique, I started feeling better, and I don't have this depression. I have ups and downs like everyone, but I don't feel like depression doesn't feel even like that's my life anymore. And, I'm not the perfect, like, I don't have the greatest memory, but I don't walk around thinking I'm stupid or I'm incapable. But as I used the Dalian method, what happened is I wasn't really fixing my problems. What I was doing was transforming them and uncovering that actually I am a strong person. I'm intelligent, I'm capable, and I can take care of myself, which I had no idea I had inside of me. So when I talk about these potentials inside of me or us, I really don't see any reason why not every human being on this planet has the same potential to transform. Because I look at where I came from, and it was such a helpless, small place where I was so not even being able to think for myself or stand up for myself, to a place where very different, like I'm a very different person. So if that can happen to me, then I don't see why everyone doesn't have that potential, And so in using the Dalian method, now I use it not to fix what's wrong. I love to use it because I love seeing, okay, I have this challenge. They're much more minor than in my past, where I was dealing with sexual abuse in my own history. I was dealing with rage. I was dealing with just so much repressed stuff. It was overwhelming at first, but then now I don't have all of that. But what I have is just a huge curiosity and excitement at seeing, oh, what is life trying to show me? And I don't feel offended now or judge myself when I see a part of my unconscious or ego. It's like, oh, okay, there you are. Let's see what I need to learn from this. I don't judge myself anymore. Even when I make these mistakes or I'm coming from a place and I realize it, that it's like, oh, that was just something in my unconscious. It's like, oh, I'm happy to know myself in a better way. And it's exciting because every time I see something, then I'm uncovering something more in me that's beautiful. The ability to love myself, the ability to accept myself, and to be in my strength. And my own voice too. So, yeah.
And it's interesting you say that, Leela, because my life came from the polar opposite.
Yeah.
Yet it had all the same underlying issues that were hidden from me.
Interesting.
So with my life, it was more about, okay, the model says success is money, it is authority, it is leadership, it is presence. It's like it had all of those ideas in my mind. And so I chased the sort of dream of what we're here to do as human beings. And by the time I arrived at the Dalian Method door, I was depressed like you, but for different reasons. Like I was depressed because I felt cheated. I felt cheated that the dream of accumulating money was happiness because it wasn't. I felt cheated at how hard I had worked to make something of myself, only to see a lot of that be taken away. I felt cheated over the fact that we have our physical body, and I'd watched my sister go through a car accident and suddenly she was paralyzed. And so my faith in even the body is only one step towards where we ought to be looking, and that's about death. But I recognize that the frailness of our body. So when you go to succeed or you go to achieve, you think you're a conqueror of life and you've conquered nothing.
Yeah.
And so by the time I came to the Dalian Method, I am so grateful at the things that this artificial life of trying to be successful was hiding from me. It was hiding my inferiority. It was hiding my insecurity. It was hiding my inability to really love myself. It was hiding my inability to see myself as an equal to everybody around me because I was under the myth that I'm successful.
Yeah, because what you're seeing through the use of the Dalian Method is already an inherent part of you. You don't need to accomplish, right?
That's right.
There's no place to get for you to love yourself and see yourself as valuable to people.
Yeah. And that's all part of the lie. And that's why I did feel cheated, because so many of us still are hearing, you know, to be successful, you need a vision board to attain and to be a manifester and to do all these things. But we're still going away from ourselves, thinking these outside things that we can possess in some way justify that makes us worthy, when that's the furthest from the truth, because our worthiness is in accepting our ordinariness.
Yeah.
Our worthiness is in accepting that the journey is actually about discovering who we are. And so much of this outside success model, I'm going to be very honest about it, is ugly, because the outside success model is about being competitive. It's about comparing yourself to other people. It's about a dog-eat-dog world. It's self-centered. That's not conscious leadership. That is not conscious awareness. That's not for the greater good of all. Yeah. They're all concepts that help to separate us.
I think that's outdated and it's ran its time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Narava, you're going to say something?
Well, I'm just seeing the exact opposite side of the coin, which is where I was coming from, with that deep conditioning of you have to help others. You have to put up first.
Yeah. And what about money too? Like
money
to that part, because I see that part too.
Yeah. I don't want anything to do with it. I just want to save the world, that kind of stuff. It's, and how I see that it's all of that energy truly was just my own being wanting to know myself, wanting to save myself.
Yeah. Can you please talk about that more? Yeah.
Like my own suffering. And instead of, I was totally projecting it out on the world. And now I see that I was coming from that yearning of the soul wanting to wake up and to know the truth. But it's just, we're trained to look outside of us from the moment we're born. We're not conditioned to look inside for our own answers. And it just seems to compound and teach us. And of course I was brought up in the Christian church, and all of that is about self-sacrifice.
That nobility and
there's like this martyr syndrome, sacrificing yourself and you're exhausted and your knuckles are bare and your back is killing yourself because you served then you get a badge of honor.
Yeah.
And that's bullshit, and it's really it's really ugly when we don't acknowledge what's really going inside, because then that energy, so if I'm doing something but I'm feeling resentful behind it, that's actually what I'm transferring.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. And that's ugly.
Yeah.
And to see that. So now I really, I love that one of the lessons that I've learned is to only do what feels authentic for me. Like when it comes to birthdays and Christmas and all these shoulds and etc. Like I really trust my energy, and I don't do anything. Or, I canceled a lunch. Actually, it was a dinner for some people that we were going to have over. And I said, you know what, to my roommate, I said, I just don't feel it. I don't feel the energy to do it. I can't do it. So I had to cancel it. And to trust that flow of energy is such a gift to ourselves, but we're not conditioned.
Yeah. And that's what the Dalian method does, is it's hard to it's hard to really understand what's happening until you experience it yourself. Yeah. Oh my gosh, this is a Christian conditioning. Like you can't always see it, especially if that's not your background, but it's in the collective, right?
Yeah.
So through the use of the Dalian method, it's like you see the truth. No one can really give that to you. It gets uncovered by going inside.
That's right. Yeah. And maybe that's one of the unique aspects about the Dalian method.
Absolutely.
In the sense that it is not here to keep the status quo.
Yeah.
It is not here to keep the existing social structures in place. It's not here to keep the old doctrines in place.
Absolutely.
It is here to uncover the truth of what it means to be human. And that does mean that many of the vested ways of running life, we have to see basically the matrix of how we've got caught up into a web of wherever we think we fit in, but whether that's a web of, I'm suffering, or whether it's a web of I'm superior, or if it's a web of I'm here to serve, it doesn't matter. We're still in a web somewhere. And that web is stopping us from actually owning the beauty of what we are as individuals. Mm-hmm. And to be empowered to know that and understand that, and to be empowered to know and understand that, so that you then can facilitate real change for people rather than stuff that still keeps them locked in the web.
And there's a reason that that's happening, is it creates dependency, right? And this is the reason why we kind of have this fiery way of talking about the Dalian method, is because we have to, because it'll get shut down, right? This is the status quo. Anything that threatens the status quo, people kind of like, so we have to kind of stand up for this place of, it's not just a technique, it's for the ability to become conscious that every individual has a right to do, but it's so challenging in this world because there's a challenge at each level of awareness that wants to push you back, and of course there's a lesson in that too. But and
Leela, how we were talking before about, I was mentioning that movie that from, I don't know, it was from the 80s, I think, called They Live, and sort of the concept behind it. And I see that I've been going through this incredible learning inside myself with the Dalian method and all the things I've uncovered. And then I'm looking out at the community of people around me, and I can see so much more. Like, as you guys know, when you really start to dig inside, you see what's happening for other people too. You see where they're stuck. Yeah. And of course, out of compassion, a lot of the times we don't say anything, because everybody has a right to their own path, and everyone's going through, what they need to go through. But then there's this place where there's deep inside, I recognize that what really fuels me is to truly serve humanity. It's not just about myself. This is a collective thing that we're in. And when you see someone suffering, you want to help. But trusting that place of, okay, do they, is there an opening for me to share something? And in the movie, that place in the movie where these two guys, one of them in the movie has these sunglasses that show the truth of humanity and what's really going on. The other guy doesn't want to see it. And the one that knows the truth is fighting with this other guy and trying to force the glasses on him. And I don't know that that any of us are in that place of, wanting to do that kind of like force the sunglasses on. But yet the thing is, we're holding on to this incredible gem that the world most of the world doesn't know about. So that dance of like how to share it and how to help to reveal and let this gem shine in the world, without
looking like you're going out to rescue people, or without looking like you're going out to show something that's better than. You're actually doing it because your heart says, listen guys, you don't need to suffer, you don't need to stay stuck, you don't need to be where you're at. There is another way, and this is a very profound way, so here it is, take it. Like, it's that sense, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing by making this video. We're not going into people's lives and saying, okay, you got to live this way, right?
No.
I learned that lesson.
No.
That's not okay to do, but it's by sharing our own experience and just what we feel deep down, what feels right for us, and using our voice, which is, the practice of using DM is a practice in using your voice, your own authentic voice, whatever that is in the moment. So, yeah.
And I like what Madda's aspiration about this is, that she knows, even though the Dalian method has been created through her, she knows the method doesn't belong to her per se, or to any of us. She knows that the work is about creating a foundation so that it stays here for 7 generations to come. It's about the people that are coming after us.
Yeah, and they're coming in more advanced right now. And the old technique can't help these kids that are more advanced. They won't cut it. These kids are beyond even their parents half the time. So
absolutely.
Yeah, and they're suffering. They're not, it's hard. Yeah.
Yeah. And even as a parent here with like 3 children, the first thing I wanted to do was to help them to understand this method. And they've had lots of practice with it, but they are in the small minority yet, but it's them. It's those people that need to know the power of this, because our education system is failing our children. Our education system isn't guiding them in the way they need to be helped. And if this type of education arises early in their lives, they don't need to be a victim, and they don't need to be an achiever. They don't
need to give up their power to any outside of authority, which is what, like, we all did that to some extent. Like, you did it from the spiritual kind of way. Yeah. Kendi did it from the ideas of success. I did it because I wanted to fit in and be liked and be loved and be normal and get attention, all these things. So any final...
That's it. It's about it's about helping people to not give their power away. I think that's a beautiful ending.
Okay, sounds good.
and that this is self-healing. I mean, yes, there are facilitators, because human nature is, we get lazy and we need help, but really, if when we're courageous and we really are willing to take responsibility for our life and look inside, this method is something that anybody can use on their own.
They can use it on their own. And I started out needing a lot of support from people, and I've gotten more and more independent. I can do more alone. So that grows with time, and people are at different places. Some people love to work alone. Yeah.
And I don't necessarily always enjoy working alone. Like, I enjoy working directly with Madda a lot, because I just love the fact that she's here with a seeing that is so razor sharply accurate. So whilst I have the chance, and she's on the planet and she's able to facilitate such dramatic transformation for people, then I love being able to take advantage of that, even though it's seen as dependence. There is an intelligence behind it too.
Yeah, can you speak to that? Because what is the difference between, we're talking about taking our authority back, and then you're saying, I love to go to my teacher. So can you explain that? I know the difference, but it's hard for people to grasp that paradox.
Yeah, I know. So the reason what I'm trying to explain here is that the inventor of this method, Mother Eliza Dalian, comes from an extremely pure place and a level of consciousness that is very, very, very rare on this planet. And because it's that level of consciousness that is so rare, and hence the potency and the power of the Dalian method. So for me, I love to be able to sort of almost expose myself to that bright light that is able to quickly see the places where I'm stuck so that I don't have to grope for too long.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess it's from a selfish perspective, again, that I'm coming from, where it is from that place that says, look, I'm in the hands of someone who can see in such an amazing way. And while she's on the planet, let's have maximum benefit in the evolution of consciousness through this. So of course I like to use the self-healing Dalian method on myself too, and I do practice. But if you've been stuck for a very long time and you don't want to fall behind the old ego patterns, here is an amazing light that can help us. And that's how I see it.
Yeah. And so when you work with someone that is helping you back to your own strength, and which is not dependence, it's just getting the support from someone who's basically been where we are and is just like a head. It's like, okay, this is how we all help each other on this planet. It's okay. Yeah. The difference between dependence and integrity in that relationship is what happens inside you in that process, where you can start to navigate the world more independently because of that situation, because the person wants you to take your power back. And like, not as something they just talk about, like how, it's actually real, and they're going to throw you back to yourself.
That's right.
And then you're going to learn through that process. Something based on dependence is like, you saved my life, but if I didn't have you, that thing, I wouldn't know what to do, and I wouldn't know, So, and then, so.
Actually, that's a nice way, because I remember very early on saying, I can't believe that I traveled from England to come to Vancouver just to find you, Madda. And she just smiled and didn't say too much. And I think I might have repeated it again about a year later. And the second time I said it, she said, you didn't come to find me, Kindy. You came to find you.
Yeah. And that's the shift that happens, and yeah, absolutely.
And, just to maybe add a little bit to that, in case, like, I don't know where this video is going and who's going to see it, but for anyone that is listening to this and maybe doesn't know what the Dalian method is yet, there's so much magic about it, but the most important part that I see is that we ourselves are doing the work.
Yes.
It's not somebody healing you, or, we don't go to Mata for her to heal us. No. She points the direction. She goes right down in and says, okay, there. And then we have to do the work.
That's right.
Right? That's the thing. Through our own, breath and verbal expression in this very precise way, that's how the magic happens. That's how the transformation happens. That's how we open our body and find that part that is naturally there inside all of us.
Yeah, and the relationship with a teacher is, to me, like I just love it. To me, it's such a beautiful thing. A lot of people, it's coming up now under controversy because there's a lot of teachers that have been out of integrity, and then they all get lumped, and then we all get lumped as followers, and we're all in a cult, all this silly stuff. Yeah. But the way I see it is, okay, I'm still in a learning process. On this planet, we are all equal, but we are at different levels of awareness. Let's not pretend that that's not true. Okay, that's the truth. It's okay. It doesn't mean we judge it or superiority, impurity. I don't judge a 4-year-old for not being like a 10-year-old. But the thing is, if I'm going to build a house, and I've not built a house before, I'm going to find the best house builder there is, because I want to have the best house there is. Yeah. Why not? It's just people are so confused about these things, and they're in their mind and they're afraid, right? And then they project. So yeah, maybe we talked about that enough, but
That was a nice that was a nice explanation, Leela. That really helped.
that's how I think of it. Like, yeah, why wouldn't we get the help to help ourselves?
And there's the other, I remember having a profound sort of aha moment listening to the Osho Seven Valleys recording, where it talks about there comes a point on the journey or the evolution of the soul where we do need a master to work through these very tricky parts of the ego. I mean, it you know, it is tricky, and I'm so grateful for the support and somebody who can see through, you know, the games that I play with myself.
Yeah,
Absolutely. That's why I love it. I mean, sometimes it's very harsh to experience the Zen stick, because in the moment the ego is hurt and bruised. But that's what I love about Mada so much, is that she's not going to let us hide behind any aspect of the ego. And she has the compassion to understand how tricky it is for us to see it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, all of you.
Guys.
Thanks for your idea to do this, Leela.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for watching.
Yes, thank you, everybody, for being here.
You can stop the recording.